Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained and depleted? Maybe even confused or kind of sick to your stomach? Well, by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to avoid falling for that trap moving forward. Hi friends, my name is Tamie M. Joyce. I'm an empowerment life coach, and today I want to talk to you about powerful phrases that you can begin to use immediately to disarm the destructive narcissist in your life. Before I begin, I want to quickly announce that a few spots have opened up for the free one-on-one consult with me for the Freedom Class coaching program to see if we're a good fit for working together. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to stick around till the end of the video for the announcement on that. And with that, let's get started. So let's talk about some powerful phrases you can begin to use immediately to disarm the destructive narcissist in your life. But first, before we dive into the phrases, it's important for us to realize that when we're in the habit of getting caught up in these crazy-making, energy-draining, mind-bending, frustrating conversations, it's typically because we're coming from a place of woundedness where we're trying to be seen and heard. Specifically, more often than not, from people who are, for whatever reason, incapable of seeing or hearing us. That might be because they're so completely wrapped up in self, nose embedded firmly in navel, hanging on to their little toesies, or they're running an agenda, which does not include seeing or hearing us. For example, if we've been the family scapegoat our whole lives, seeing and hearing us might actually involve their having to make some admissions or take some responsibility for some stuff that they're not ready to own. So they're running an agenda to not see or hear us, right? They are completely committed to misunderstanding us, invalidating us, misrepresenting us for whatever reason. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. So the next time you find yourself involved in one of these crazy-making conversations, stop for a moment and silently ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish here? What am I trying to get out of this? Who's showing up in this conversation? Check in with yourself. More often than not, it's our wounded inner child showing up, trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be validated, trying to be understood. The problem is, like I said, we're trying to do that with people who are running their own agenda and typically are fundamentally, constitutionally incapable of being that for us. So our job is to love ourselves enough, take care of ourselves, by not engaging in this kind of conversation. Now, I'm going to give you some phrases and tools and tips that'll help you disengage from this type of conversation and protect yourself so you don't get sucked in. But it's important to understand that pre-recovery, we get pulled into these because we're carrying all of this wounding. And our subconscious wounded inner child is trying so desperately hard to be seen, so desperately hard to be heard. And when we're being rejected, misunderstood, misjudged, misrepresented, our tendency is to react. Now, one of the challenges of healing and recovery is to learn to stop reacting and start responding, right? To become responders, less reactive and more able to respond from a calm, clear, grounded place. A lot easier to do when we've got some healing and recovery under our belt, when we're not actually operating from our wounded inner child, right? When we're not operating from our wounds. Also, sometimes the most appropriate thing to do is to not respond at all. And that really is where our power lies. Being able to decide, rather than reacting, decide, am I going to respond or not? Sometimes the most powerful thing we can say is nothing or very little, right? So that's the challenge of recovery, learning to become a responder by choice, or even sometimes it's more appropriate to not respond at all. That can be the most powerful thing you can do. So again, let's talk about some phrases that you can begin to use immediately to disarm the destructive narcissist in your life so you can stop getting sucked into these crazy-making conversations. Now, first and foremost, in so much as you're able, you want to come from a place of calm detachment. Now, I know that's easier said than done, especially in pre-recovery stage when we're still deeply enmeshed in these very toxic dynamics. But trust me, with practice, you can get really good at this. One thing that really helps is just learning to hold on to yourself, feel into your body, consciously choose that you're not going to give your power away, consciously focus on your breathing, just breathing in and out, right? Just holding on to yourself and choosing to be in that place of conscious detachment. Now, from there, in so much as you're able, you want to speak in the I language. Very succinct, very clear. Do your best to keep the emotion out of it. Speak in the I language. One of my favorite communication tools is the WIN technique. For example, when you fill in the blank, I feel fill in the blank, I need, or I need you to fill in the blank. Just super clear communication, right? To deliver whatever information it is that you need to deliver, and then silence. You don't say another word after that. When you fill in the blank, I feel fill in the blank, I need fill in the blank, and silence. You're simply delivering information, speaking in the I language. When this happens, fill in the blank, I feel abandoned, betrayed, angry, disrespected, whatever it is, fill in that blank. I need to feel safe. I need peace and calm. I need to be able to get a good night's sleep. I need whatever it is for you. And silence. Again, you're delivering information in a very clear and succinct way in the I language. You're not attacking anyone. And the purpose of the silence is to let it land. Now, how a person responds to that information that you've just delivered is going to be a whole lot of information for you. Now, depending on the situation you're in, the WIN technique may or may not be an appropriate fit for what it is that you're dealing with, right? So if keeping it in the I language and delivering information and letting it land isn't appropriate for what it is that you're dealing with in the moment, something else to consider is to keep it in the we language. We want to avoid getting sucked in and giving our power away. We also want to avoid inflicting narcissistic injury unnecessarily, because all that does is, volunteer us to be a target, right? So when we speak in the we language, the destructive narcissist that we're dealing with is less likely to feel attacked, targeted themselves, and less likely to lash out at us. So, for example, we may have to agree to disagree on this. Well, I guess we're just going to have to agree to disagree. Well, I guess we just have to accept that we see this differently. Well, I guess we just have to accept that we feel differently about this. Using the we language enables you to communicate what you need to communicate without inflicting unnecessary narcissistic injury on the individual that you're trying to communicate with. Another one of my favorites is a very simple, and silence. Silence is very powerful when we're talking about communication with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, right? Someone who is completely selfish and self-centered in the extreme, someone who's running their own agendas, someone who's operating from a distorted perception of reality, an inflated sense of their own self-importance, a sense of entitlement, what have you, right? So using silence, not in a passive-aggressive way, but just in a, I'm not going to give my power away here, just in a, I'm not letting you plug into me here. So they come at you with some attack, barrage, crazy making, nonsensical, accusing you of being, doing, whatever it is, right? Oh, and silence. Easier said than done initially. Again, especially if we're, still sitting in a lot of woundedness. All of this gets so much easier as we do our own personal healing and recovery work. There's less for them to poke into. There's less for them to hook into. There's less for them to trigger in us. But with practice, you can get really, really good at this. Breathe. Hold on to yourself, stay present, stay in your body, make the conscious choice. I'm not giving my power away. I don't have to play. And one word responses, oh, and silence. Another one, okay, and silence. Like really that simple. It's not because someone says something to us, even if it's supposedly about us, that we have to react to it. It's not because someone says a thing that it's true, or that we have to have any feeling response to it. They're entitled to their reality. They're entitled to their perception, no matter how distorted that might be, no matter how bizarre that might be, no matter how cruel that might be. They have a right to see things any way they choose. We don't have to get sucked into that vortex. We don't have to play. So they come at us, and our response can be a simple, okay, and silence. You do that a few times with a destructive narcissist, they're going to learn real quick that they can't get their energetic fix from you, right? They don't call them energy vampires for nothing. They're looking to siphon your life force energy right out of you any way they can. Any attention is better than no attention, right? Positive or negative, it doesn't matter. Getting a rise out of you, destabilizing you, hurting you, inspiring any sort of reaction, emotional reaction from you is really what they want. They get to siphon the life force energy right out of you when they succeed in doing that. When they come at you and you give them a one-word response and silence, and you're very ambivalent, nonchalant, indifferent to whatever it is, no matter what it is that they're saying, it doesn't land. It hits the floor. That doesn't have to happen too many times before they go find someone else to play with. Another powerful, short, sweet, and succinct phrase to disarm a narcissist in your life is simply, I understand, and silence. Or, I understand you see it that way. I see it differently. I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. That's okay. And silence. Let it land. Even if the silence is awkward and uncomfortable, there's nothing they can say to that. You're really not resisting what's coming at you. You are just being very flexible and going with the flow. You're not handing your power over. They can't plug in and drain your life force energy. You're not involved in, a high voltage emotional exchange that becomes very toxic very quickly. You walk away not having been heard, not having been seen. You're never going to be validated anyway. They're never going to understand your point of view. They're running their own thing, right? So just having that non-resistant sort of stance of, I understand. I understand you see it that way. I happen to see it differently. That's okay. And breathe. Silence. Let the space be what it is. Hold that place of non-resistance. There's nothing they can say to that. they come at you and your response is, oh, or okay, or I understand. Doesn't mean you agree with them. You know, all of this really involves putting our ego aside. Like when we get in there with our ego and we want to win the right fight and we want to be heard and, all of that, we lose no matter what. So it really involves mustering up enough humility to not give a shit about winning the right fight. Let them have the last word. You walk away in peace. You walk away empowered. You walk away intact. Let them think they've won. Let them think they've had the last word. Let them think they've won the right fight. The bottom line is you've been able to take care of yourself, protect yourself, not give your power away, not be completely emotionally and energetically drained and depleted, not being harmed unnecessarily. Another simple phrase, I'm sorry you see it that way. I'm sorry you feel that way. I understand. I'm sorry you see it that way. I understand. I'm sorry you feel that way. When you respond versus react versus the emotional reaction, right? When you respond in a clear, short and sweet, nice and succinct way like this, what you're doing is acknowledging their viewpoint. No matter how off the mark you feel that it might be, you're acknowledging their viewpoint, right? It's very respectful. It's very mature. And you can do that in a way without having to align yourself with them. You're not selling your soul. You're not agreeing with them. You're not giving in. It's not about that. Like all of that stuff is our ego, right? I'm just being respectful. I'm being decent. I'm being calm. I'm holding on to myself. I'm not giving my power away. I can acknowledge your viewpoint. I can respect the fact that you're entitled to see it any way you choose or see me any way you choose. I have no right to try to control or manipulate your perception of reality or your perception of me. I can acknowledge your viewpoint and still not be aligned with it, still not sacrifice my integrity, and more importantly, not give you a high voltage emotional reaction, which really is just handing over my power and all of my vital life force energy. Another phrase, I can accept that you see it that way. Or I can accept that you see me that way. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can accept it. And they come back with, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. Okay. Silence. They have nothing to plug into. Another one of my favorites, I honor your right to see it any way you choose. It's entirely up to you and really has very little to do with me. Silence. Or, I honor your right to see me any way you choose. You're entitled to your opinion. It's entirely up to you and really has very little to do with me. When you communicate this way with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, what you're really communicating is your unavailability to play, your unavailability to be emotionally manipulated, psychologically manipulated. You're not interested in getting down in the gutter and rolling around in the mud with them. It's not what you're about. Maybe it's what you've done to this point, but it gets to be a new day and you're not doing that anymore. Again, you don't have to do that too many times before they learn, if I want to get my fix, my hit of high voltage energy, emotional energy coming off of someone, I'm going to starve here. I'm not going to get that fix or that hit met here. You can also say something along the lines of, okay, I have no right to try to control your perception of it. Or I have no right to try to control your perception of me. your perception, your thing. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with me. I'm good with that. Now, one of my all-time favorites, I actually learned this from Dr. Wayne Dyer, the late and very great Dr. Wayne Dyer. I was very blessed to meet a couple of times in my life in person. And he taught me this one many, many years ago, and it's amazing how powerful it is. It requires mustering up a little humility. If you're not used to that, it might not be comfortable out of the gate, but give it a try. Simply say, you could be right about that. And silence. Now, when I use this, often in my head, I might be saying something like, you could be wrong about that too, but I'll keep that for myself, right? When someone comes at us, for example, you're such an XYZ, you're this, you're that, whatever it is that they're coming at us with, you could be right about that. Again, silently, you could be wrong about that too, but I'm deciding that my peace and my happiness are far more important than proving you wrong, than winning the right fight, than getting my own ego needs met, right? You could be right about that and leave it at that. Walk away in peace, holding on to your power, not giving your vital life force energy over to an energy vampire. Who cares if they walk away thinking they won? Who really won if you haven't engaged in the right fight, rolling around in the mud with these guys, right? So, you could be right about that. And silence. What can they say to that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And if they do come back with something else because they're cranking up the volume and they're really determined to get a rise out of you, just keep breathing, holding on to yourself. Oh, okay. And leave it at that. Now, here's the thing. When I determine that the person I'm dealing with clearly lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, they've shown me over and over and over again that they're lacking in empathy or conscience, they're entitled, they're selfish and self-centered in the extreme, they're toxic in any number of ways, right? When I determine that this is the kind of individual that I'm dealing with, for the most part, I just choose not to deal, right? Like I just choose not to stand in front of the bus and get run over time and time and time again. Once I discern, and this isn't about judgment. Judgment is, all about criticism and condemnation. Discernment's a whole other thing. Discernment is about a rational, accurate assessment of what it is that we are dealing with, right? So when I discern that I'm dealing with someone who has a lot of destructive narcissistic traits, I'm probably not going to be engaging with them a whole lot. I'm probably going to sidestep them. I might give them the benefit of the doubt for a little while, but I have learned that these people do not change. They do not change. And if I'm looking to get my needs met from people who are constitutionally, fundamentally incapable of meeting them in any area of my life, then I've got work to do. I've got work to do, right? So if you're faced with someone who is perpetually sucking you into this kind of a dynamic, this kind of a conversation, this kind of an exchange, you might consider reevaluating the relationship. Now, I know that's easier said than done. Sometimes we're married to these people, right? Sometimes we have children with these people, and you can't just, leave today, right? I get that it's not always, that cut and dry and black and white. But for the most part, what it really boils down to is giving ourselves the permission to take care of ourselves, loving ourselves enough to say, no thanks, I don't think I'm going to go to that family function or that dinner. I'm not really interested in exposing myself to this level of toxicity and this kind of abuse. I'm just not open to it anymore. I'm going to love myself enough to remove myself from these dynamics so I can heal and begin to live my best life as my best self. The other thing I want to mention is, all of these phrases to disarm a narcissist don't always work all of the time. Depending on the situation that you're dealing with, you might choose one, not the other. They're not all always going to work across the board. For example, to say to someone verbally, "You could be right about that," as a means of disarming them in terms of, this noxious, toxic type of enmeshed dynamic and conversation in the relationship, that's one thing. But that's not something you ever want to say in a text or an email. You don't want to say to your ex-narcissist husband, wife, whoever, "You could be right about anything," in writing, if you're in the midst of some sort of court battle or custody battle, right? So these are tools and strategies to have in your back pocket. Utilize a little common sense with them, test them out. Most importantly, practice using them when it's not so high voltage, when it's not so important, when the stakes are not so high. Begin to develop the muscle so that when you really need them, you have some practice, you've developed some muscle, you've gotten used to being able to say these things in this type of a situation. And then you can, again, walk away peacefully, intact, feeling really good about yourself without having given your power away. Now, a couple more to add to your list, to your little toolkit of phrases that you can use to disarm a narcissist. "I'm not responsible for how you choose to see me." They're coming at you, boom, 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 boom. You're this, you're that. You did this, you didn't do that, whatever it is. "I'm not responsible for how you choose to see me." End of story. You this, you that, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. On it goes. The tirade's coming at you. Well, the truth is, I'm not responsible for how you feel. I'm not responsible for how you feel. As untreated or newly recovering codependents, especially those of us who are highly empathic, our tendency is to take on a whole lot of responsibility that isn't ours. We're responsible for everything and everyone and how everyone feels or doesn't feel. We take on a whole bunch of stuff that really doesn't belong to us. And another one of the challenges of, the healing and recovery path when you're really doing the real deal is to separate out what is and is not yours. When we stop taking on stuff that doesn't belong to us, we can legitimately get on a path of healing and recovery and start feeling better about ourselves from the inside out. Very difficult to do that when you're walking around carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, taking on everyone else's blame and shame and projected unresolved issues, etc. Right? So it's really, really important that we get super clear about what isn't ours. And that can be a process for sure, but we want to get clear about what we are and are not responsible for. We're not responsible for how a destructive narcissist chooses to see us. We're not responsible for how a destructive narcissist feels and what they're trying to project onto us. That's not our responsibility. We are responsible for ourselves, for loving ourselves, for taking care of ourselves, for learning how to set boundaries, for learning how to heal and recover and up-level our sense of self-love and self-esteem. That is our responsibility. Their stuff, that's theirs. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope you found this helpful. If you're new to my channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. Also, I'm super excited to announce that the free one-to-one consult with me for the Freedom Class program is now open. Please only apply if you're serious about working together to take your life to the next level in a program with me. The people I work with and work really well with are those who are ready to begin their healing and recovery journey from codependency and narcissistic abuse. People who are sick and tired of repeating the same painful patterns in their romantic relationships as well as their family of origin relationships. People who continue to be caught up in the abusive, toxic cycles on the receiving end of narcissistic abuse, whether that be with their romantic partners, their spouses, or their family of origin. People who are really ready to break free from those patterns, to do the inner work, to heal and recover so they can finally start living their best life as their best selves. If this sounds like you, there's a link in the description below to book a free one-on-one consult with me. Apply to see if you qualify. We can get on a call together and see if we're a good fit for working together. I'll look forward to talking with you soon. And as always, I'll leave you with this. Know your value. Know your value and unlock your freedom. Mwah. Much love. Bye for now.